Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are going to react to the newest Netflix documentary called Receiver that details the seasons that were for Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings, Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions, and Davante Adams for the Las Vegas Raiders. But our main focus of today will be the two narratives that are told through San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel and tight end George Kittle. Before we go into the actual show, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, put your comments down below or in the chat. Tell me what you thought of the documentary. Have you seen the whole thing just yet? What were your takeaways from it? And let's dive into what I took away from Netflix's newest and generally just an awesome documentary called Receiver. And I want to start off with where this entire documentary began, because Peyton Manning's talking because he produced it, and then a voice out of nowhere, being Randy Moss, says, "Hold up, Peyton, I think I should be doing the intro." And he had an amazing quote to begin, and it kind of tells the story of how the world views wide receivers. And the quote is, "They call us divas despite our decoy routes. They call us distractions despite all the damn blocking we do, but no one seems to recognize the one thing we actually are: always open." Thought that was a great quote by Randy Moss and kind of set the tone for where the documentary was going. And I think the way they painted the pictures of George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, although very, very different, because the documentary, it followed George Kittle, his personal side, his family, detailing who he is as a person, giving us insight into his psyche almost on an episode-to-episode basis, whereas Deebo Samuel, it was much more of how important he is to the San Francisco 49ers on the field, the energy he brings, the impact he has to the offense. And I think, when you look at that, you see who George Kittle is every single Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. If you've been to training camp and OTAs and minicamp, you see this zany personality George Kittle has, right? Whereas for Deebo Samuel, when you think of Deebo, you think of this imposing, dominating running back that actually plays receiver, get the ball into his hands, and watch him wreak havoc. And honestly, I thought they did a great job detailing everything from 2023 training camp all the way until the Super Bowl, which, unfortunately for Niner fans in this documentary, they go back and show the Super Bowl loss against Kansas City in 2019. They talk about the NFC Championship losses to the Rams and Philadelphia a couple years ago. And of course, this thing wraps up where the season ended last year, which again is just heartbreak for Niner fans. So I will reap the praises, or I will speak the praises of the documentary and how great it was, and all the behind the scenes access we got to our favorite players and getting to know them on a personal level. But I'd be lying if I say I didn't feel a sense of dread, because I knew where everything ended, right? We know where the season ended, and I looked at my wife and I said, I don't know if I'm actually ready to watch the Super Bowl again. I don't think I want to get more insight into the agony that was, 5 quarters of desperation and dreadful play of just kind of waiting for the inevitable. But I swallowed it, I watched it, and it was awesome. But what makes things worse, and this gets to our first point, is that we know how great this team is, right? Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy. This roster is stacked. Offense, defense, even the coaching staff was really good last year. The fans can feel that. But when you learn the team actually feels it, when the team, being Deebo Samuel, says to the camera, all the vibes were super high before the year and they believed they could go where they wanted to be, and then they actually reached their goal of getting back to the Super Bowl only for it to end on a sour note. mean, that really kind of breaks your heart as a fan, where we're here watching TVs, going to bars. If you're going to Levi's or road games, it's great. You're tailgating with the fan base, but we're not in that locker room. We're not in the meetings, and we're not sitting next to these players that go through the heartbreak and the quietest moments. How do they get over this? How do they continue to come back year after year and learn and fight and grow? And knowing that this could be the upcoming year in 2024 and 2025 be the team's last dance. Knowing last year, 2023, they felt like, hey, we got the team, and we hadn't had a team like this since 2019 when they went back to the Super Bowl or went to the Super Bowl the first time. But, I had to ask myself when I heard that quote of Deebo Samuel, does that still stand true today? After you lose against Kansas City the second time in the Super Bowl in the fashion in which they lost, right? How do you pick yourself back up? Do you still believe that we can get back to the mountaintop again and hopefully reclaim our spot at the very top of it? Or does 2 Super Bowl losses in 5 seasons negatively affect you to a point of, your motivation is gone? Does it harden you to a point of we have to push even harder and further? Because if you skip all the way to the end of the documentary, you hear George Kittle after that fumble by Christian McCaffrey in the first quarter, first drive of the game. He's screaming on the sideline to himself, damn it, I'm not good enough right now. I have to be better right now. And, it's not like you don't hear the emotions from players, because you do, but it's the fact that usually you only hear them when they're celebrating. You rarely ever see, this like raw emotion of, I have fought my entire life for this. In the biggest moments, when the lights are the brightest, I'm not playing up to the par or the level I've set, the benchmark that I've set for myself. And to be honest with you, that was kind of hard to hear. Was it great to get the insight? Yeah, but it was like, God, like I found myself wanting, despite knowing the outcome, almost hoping that we were going to get revealed a different one, right? It was like, gosh, like I hate having to see this, but my first question leaving after watching the documentary was, how do you pick yourself back up? How does this team walk into 2024 knowing they were second best for the second time in 5 years after losing 2 NFC title games in the fashion in which they have? Like, you would think their hearts would be just solid, just a diamond. Nothing's penetrating those things. But again, we shall see. I want to say hi to Jimmy in the comments saying, what's up, Sterling? Fluffy Ninja saying, let's go. Kenny Niner saying, let's go. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday. Have you seen the documentary? What'd you guys think of Wide Receiver on Netflix? And let's dive into Deebo Samuel and how the documentary covers the Niners' number 1 wide receiver at the moment. And I think that there's a clear narrative being told here. There is a clear cut. They wanted to get 1 point across and hammer 1 point home to the viewer. And that is the importance of Deebo Samuel to the San Francisco Niners offense. And I think, after you hear from George Kittle and you hear from Brock Purdy and you hear from Kyle Shanahan, all sharing why Deebo Samuel is the ultimate cog in the Niners machine, it kind of makes you sit back and say, you know what, man, like Deebo's a great player. Number 1 receiver for a reason. 2021 All-Pro year, carried the offense back to the playoffs when they looked like the season was going to be lost. Even at times last year, go back and watch those few Seattle games in that kind of middle of the season or late in the season stretch before it got to Christmas. Deebo Samuel was phenomenal. They even said in the documentary, one of the players was like, you have 11 touchdowns and you've missed 3 games. Now, he only had 7 receiving touchdowns last year. But Deebo Samuel was awesome despite all the crap we give him. He had 12 total touchdowns last year, over 1,000 scrimmage yards. I mean, sometimes you forget right? When the season ends and the way it ends, when you have that kind of sour taste in your mouth and you've watched the Super Bowl and it goes to overtime and Mecole Hardman catches a game-winning pass and you're watching everything you've worked for, everything you've watched and invested in as a fan kind of fall apart, it's hard to remember how actually good this team was. And, the documentary was a great reminder as to the San Francisco 49ers kicked some ass last year. And we're talking not a little bit ass, talking a giant BBL amount of ass last year. They were great. And I think, I didn't realize how great Deebo Samuel was, or I hadn't remembered how great he was. We went through the draft, right? Are they going to trade him? Are they going to keep him? Talking about Brandon Aiyuk. Are they going to keep him? Are they going to trade him? And you kind of forget what actually happened on the field. And I think that it was a clear-cut reminder of, when Deebo Samuel's on his game and he's healthy, he's still one of the most dominant football players in the game. He's still one of the most dominant offensive weapons in the game. And I wouldn't be shocked, because I left and I kind of took this away from the documentary of, I don't think they're going to trade Deebo now. Listening to how, again, Kittle and Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan talked about what they have in Deebo. You have quotes from Purdy saying, if we can get the ball into his hands, we always have a shot. You have Kyle Shanahan saying, when he has the ball in his hands, he's pretty much different than anybody else. Anytime you can get the ball into Deebo's hands, it's a problem for a defense. And, that was early on in the videos, early on in the episodes. Then you get into the stretch last year when they lose Deebo Samuel against Cleveland. He misses the Vikings game, and then misses the Bengals game and comes back after the bye week against Jacksonville. Then you have quotes from George Kittle when they lose Deebo against the Browns saying it was a huge Deebo game plan day out there. So there goes 50% of the game plan. They obviously lose that game against the Browns. They lose that game against the Vikings. And George Kittle talks about not having Deebo Samuel headed into that game against the Vikings on Monday Night Football against Kirk Cousins and company. And he even said, when you remove a piece of the puzzle, it makes it difficult. And I won't lie to you, when I was watching that, I got really frustrated because, yes, we lost those 3 games. Yes, it sucked, but ultimately, number 1 seed, Super Bowl, great and all. But in the back of my mind, I was like, you know what? You have Christian McCaffrey. You have Brock Purdy. You have George Kittle. You have Brandon Aiyuk. You have Juwan Jennings. You have all these weapons. And the picture being painted is that Deebo Samuel is this team's kind of only answer or only kind of form of offense, which isn't true knowing Christian McCaffrey, who really wasn't featured in the doc. He's the reigning offensive player of the year. He's incredible. I get it. I myself love Deebo. What he can do for this team is incredible. But the way they were painting the picture in the documentary was that if they lose Deebo, all hope is lost. And then I got even more frustrated because I said, you know what? That's kind of the truth, and it shouldn't be. And that's really frustrating because, again, it's no knock on Deebo. It's kind of a knock on the over-reliance, despite the weapons this offense has, on Deebo Samuel. Losing Deebo Samuel in itself sucks. It stinks. He is a cog in the machine. But he isn't the only cog. He's certainly a big one, but it's almost as if there's no Deebo, Shanahan's like, I don't know what to do. And we saw that in playoff games. We saw that through those 3 games against Cleveland and Minnesota and against the Bengals. And who knows how many of those games you actually win against the Vikings, the Bengals, and the Browns. But then you see in the Super Bowl too, when Deebo Samuel re-injures his shoulder or pulls his hamstring, and it sucks for Deebo. This documentary went over the handful of injuries he went through last year, had a battle through, and I commend him for that. I am someone that said it kind of felt like Deebo may have quit on the team or just could have been out there, but chose not to be out there to preserve his health, which when you watch this, you find out, while you can still have that opinion, when you pull your hamstring, that sucker hurts. I pulled my hammy into playing baseball, and you don't run much in baseball, that sucker hurts. And he went out there and gave it what he could. And now how much you can speculate all about what that actually means and whatnot. But, I sat back and I was like, well, yes, this is true. Well, yes, Deebo Samuel is a massive cog in the machine. The offensive identity shouldn't just go out the door. Shouldn't just go out the window. Like, this isn't as if you're the Detroit Lions, who, no disrespect to Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery and those guys. If they lose Amon-Ra St. Brown, they do not have their number one receiver who's going to have 135 targets a year. This is not like, the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Green Bay Packers, where he's getting the ball 15 times a game. This is Deebo Samuel, who's touching the ball 10 times a game, half of those on end arounds and design runs, right? Which, he's phenomenal. He's great. He can carry the offense. But when you watch the documentary and you hear quotes like Brock Purdy saying, playing without Deebo Samuel, we do so much with Deebo in our offense. When he's out, it's tough for us all. And that stuff is true. It is tough for an offense when you lose anybody. If you lose Aiyuk, you lose McCaffrey, you lose Kittle, those things stink. We saw in the Super Bowl, George Kittle said he couldn't lift his arm over his head because his shoulder hurt so bad, and he got hurt on the one catch that he had the whole game for a clutch first down, mind you, but still. Charlie Warner goes out there, not much of an impact player at all. Kittle's like, I'm going to go get a cortisone shot, and finds his way back on the field to give this team a chance to win. But it's like, why are the Niners so Deebo-centric? I get he's one of a kind. I get he is, there is no other Deebo. Teams are trying to find their own Deebo Samuel. Kadarius Toney being a prime example of the Giants and then the Chiefs failing at that. Wan'Dale Robinson, who played better last year for the Giants, he's not Deebo, right? There are other teams trying to mimic what San Francisco's doing with Deebo because it's so great and it's so unique. That said, I have no problem designing game plans and utilizing your stars, right? I would never fault a quarterback for giving the ball to his weapons to have them do their job. Just like I wouldn't fault a head coach for designing game plans for his best players. You obviously do that. No one's saying, hey, Chris Conley, here's the game plan, and it's designed just for you. Hey, Jacob Cowing, right now, year one, this game plan is designed just for you. No one's doing that. That said, when you miss a piece of the puzzle, it's not like you don't have the ancillary pieces to make the picture still clear. You might have a blurry piece here or some plays you can't call here, but it's not as if the entire playbook's out the window. And I think when you watch, I think it may have been Greg Olsen or Tony Romo who called the Super Bowl. They said, now Kyle Shanahan has to find some plays in the playbook to call without Deebo. And it's like, is the playbook not this thick? I get it. You're installing a game plan, and I don't want to sound ignorant towards a Super Bowl matchup. Obviously, you walk in with a smaller game plan in mind because you're not going to call 300 plays. You want your best, 60. You want your best 70 tops, if that, right? And I totally get that. But it's like this offense looks drastically different without Deebo. And going into a season where we're talking about, could this be his last in San Francisco? I walked away ultimately frustrated knowing that even hypothetically, let's say they re-sign Brandon Aiyuk and they trade Deebo Samuel away, which at this moment, I don't think either one of those things are going to happen now. But let's say that happens. Deebo's gone in 1 year's time. What does San Francisco's offense look like? Is it more so because Shanahan has Deebo at his disposal? He continues to make game plans centered around him? Or is it, if he's gone, what do we do? Will we see game plans more centered around Kittle and Aiyuk and McCaffrey? And if that's the case, why can't you pivot mid-game? I'm sure it's hard. Anytime you pivot on the fly, no matter the job it is, it's hard. But I find it hard to believe the greatest offensive mind in football that has literally changed the way that coordinators and offenses are schemed up and game planned for. Everyone wants to have a Shanahan offense. Everyone wants to stop a Shanahan offense, right? Shanahan has literally changed the way we play football, and he's changed the way teams get coordinators, who they hire, how they hire. And he's impacted football to a point of the Shanahan tree is like the freaking bloodline with Roman Reigns and The Rock. It's like 90 people deep, right? That said, why can't you pivot a little bit? And again, I know we're just talking here. I don't have the insights to, what the playbook looks like and those meetings are. No one does other than those players. But as a fan, I walked away a little frustrated because of that, of they're really trying to hammer home without Deebo, who is the offense. But my retort kept saying, what do you mean, who's the offense? You got CMC, and you got Kittle, and you got Aiyuk, and you have Purdy. You're the best left tackle in football. You have all these weapons. What do you mean if they lose Deebo, they can't score? What do you mean they can't do much? But then I looked into the stats, and they put a graphic up on the screen on one of the episodes, and it showed the discrepancy. Weeks 1 through 8 with Deebo Samuel. 71 comp percentage for Brock Purdy, 8 touchdowns, 0 picks, and only a 12% off target rate. Weeks 1 through 8 without Deebo Samuel, so 3 games, right? 61% comp percentage, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a 21% off target rate. I understand a lot of what Deebo does makes the quarterback's life easier, but it's not just Brock Purdy. It's almost like Kyle Shanahan short circuits and is like, we don't have Deebo Samuel. Oh my God, what do we do? And it's like, what do you mean, what do we do? Use the offensive player of the year. Use Brandon Aiyuk, who might get paid $30 million. Use your all-pro tight end, George Kittle. Use your near MVP quarterback, Brock Purdy. Use your near Super Bowl MVP, Juwan Jennings. Use somebody else. Now you have Ricky Pearsall in the mix. You have Isaac Grundle, Elijah Mitchell. You have all these weapons. And it's like, I still don't really know who San Francisco is. They have yet to prove they can win without Deebo Samuel, despite having all the weapons they do. And while I kept wanting to push back on the narrative of him being the most important piece to the puzzle, I left thinking, oh my God, he might be the most important piece to the puzzle, and the way he plays, he can't stay healthy. And if he's gone in 1 year's time, what does the offense look like? While we have the whole 2024 season to go, he was like, holy crap, the identity of who San Francisco is, who the offense is, without Deebo Samuel is a big fat question mark of, can they actually win? They went 0-3 this year without Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel missed the majority of that Packers game, but he started the game. They got hurt in the second or third drive of that game. Then he played against the Lions, and he almost lost that one. Then he got hurt in the Super Bowl, and they lost that one. So every time Deebo's off the field, even if he gets hurt before the game starts, even if he gets hurt, in practice a handful of days prior to, or they're expecting him not to play, there still seems to be this we don't have Deebo, what are we going to do? And it's like, what do you mean, what are you going to do? Look around, Kyle. He's great. We all love Deebo, but take a look around. Tell me what you see, right? You got the OPY right there. And then they get to Kyle Shanahan talking about playing without Deebo Samuel. And what he said makes sense. I'm not going to dispute what he said. And he said, when you lose a guy like Deebo, it's not just put our backup Deebo in. It's about the player, not the play. And you're right, Kyle. There's no other Deebo Samuel in the NFL. Last year, it wasn't Ray McLeod or Jawan Jennings or Chris Conley or Danny Gray or Ronnie Bell, Willie Snead. It's not Pearsall. It's not Cowing, although Cowing has some similarities to Deebo, albeit a lot tinier and a lot smaller. You can't just put in your Deebo Samuel 2.0. But yeah, Kyle, then you got to turn away. Like if you're driving somewhere and the road says road closed, what do? You find another route. Could that route be longer? Sure. Could that route be bumpier? Could the roads be broken and cracked and have speed bumps and humps? Yeah. Could it be a desolate wasteland of dirt and sand and cactuses, but it'll get you to your destination? Yeah. But the difference is, when the Niners lose Deebo and the Deebo Samuel road is closed, they have a freaking highway that's a one-shot, one-way path to victory still. Named Christian McCaffrey, named Brock Purdy, named George Kittle, named Brandon Aiyuk. It's almost like the entire team freezes up because they know that, no Deebo. And it's like, why? I get it, he's great, but like, why? It's not like you still don't have the best players. Like, if you took out Deebo Samuel, the Niners offense would still rank top 5 in football. At least on paper. I firmly believe that. You can stack it up with the best offenses in football. Like, it would still be better than the Dallas Cowboys. It'd be better than the Philadelphia Eagles for sure. They have Saquon now, so maybe not, but still. Like, you can stack up San Francisco's offense, even without Deebo Samuel, with some of the best in the league. Like, we're talking teams that went to the AFC and NFC title games last year. The Niners offense, without Deebo, better than Baltimore. Like, it's better than 90% of the league. Honestly, the Chiefs with Mahomes and Kelsey and Pacheco and Hollywood Brown and insert other receiver, you can have at least a real conversation of, while San Francisco isn't as good as them on paper without Deebo Samuel, you can find an area in which San Francisco, by position, is better than them. Like, Aiyuk is better than Hollywood Brown. CMC is better than Pacheco. It's like, there's no excuse not to win. And I was like, God, like, they're so right, but it's so frustrating that they're painting the narrative that Deebo Samuel is the most important cog into San Francisco's offensive machine, where, while yes, he can be the number one player, fine, he can be the star receiver, fine, it like genuinely put fear in me that we can't lose this guy. We can't trade this guy in 1 year's time. And it made me think that they're not going to trade him. It literally almost changed my outlook of how the Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel thing is going to play out. Like, I went from re-sign Aiyuk, give him the money you want, in 1 year's time, trade Deebo. Or at least let Deebo's contract play out, and you can let him walk into the sunset or play somewhere else when he's 30 years old, 29 years old. Now I'm like, I have a weird feeling they're going to play this thing out with Aiyuk, and it might go on the 5th-year option this year. And they might let him hit the market next year, unless he takes a team-friendly deal. Like, when I finished the documentary, it was like, my mind has changed. Shanahan needs Deebo Samuel. The Niners need Deebo Samuel a heck of a lot more than they need Brandon Aiyuk. And that's scary. Really scary. Unless there is going to be this schematic or identity change with Pearsall coming in and Cowing coming in and Aiyuk getting an extension. But speaking of Brandon Aiyuk, while the documentary didn't cover him at all, he didn't even do an interview in it, the only shots of Aiyuk were some highlight plays and maybe some random sound bites on the sideline. That said, one, I really forgot how clutch he was against the Packers and Lions. How many third downs against the Packers did he catch? We all know the Ladybug catch against the Lions, but there was a handful of plays before that where Aiyuk was just house money when Deebo wasn't out there, or when he was out there, still outplaying him, right? And it was clear as day this team would not have been or gone to the Super Bowl without Brandon Aiyuk. But as the episodes progressed and they got deeper and deeper into the documentary, they talked about and talked to and covered Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he talked about his goals going into last season. And he said 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. And I sat back and I said, Amon-Ra St. Brown just got $30 million a year, right? And there's a lot of rumors and speculation that Brandon Aiyuk wants a contract similar to St. Brown's. But I started thinking, so we have talked about Aiyuk being the fourth option in this offense for over a month, 2 months now, right? We've kind of, gone through the timeline of events as he tries to get an extension with San Francisco. And I thought, can Brandon Aiyuk ever, on San Francisco, mind you, ever say that in this offense, his goal is 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns? Like, no. And it's no knock on Aiyuk. I think he could do it if he was utilized as a number one receiver. I think Aiyuk could do that on a handful of offenses in the league. You put him on Seattle, you put him with the Rams, you put him with Philadelphia, you put him with Mahomes. He would easily put up 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. But I thought on this team, in this offense, who we already talked about is so over-reliant on Deebo Samuel, then you get to CMC and George Kittle. Then there's Brandon Aiyuk, the fourth option. Could he put that in his notebook of, I want to get 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns? I think the answer is no. Now, you can shoot for the stars, fine. But those numbers are likely never going to be on his box score with the Niners. And because of that, I thought, you know what? He really needs to change his goals. You're not getting $30 million like a player in Detroit like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who can say, I can get 1,700 yards. I can get 150 targets. I can get 13 touchdowns in a season because they over-rely on him as well. Or they at least rely on him a lot, right? Aiyuk could never write those goals in his notebook. And I hope he watched it. I really did. Because when you watch other receivers around the league, mainly Davante Adams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amon-Ra has this arrogance, but it's good, about himself of like, I am going to get 1,500 yards. I'm going to get 10 touchdowns. I'm going to will myself to those stats because I know the offense in which I play in will allow me to do those things. He's clear as day the Detroit Lions' number one receiver. They talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown the same way Brock Purdy and George Kittle and Kyle Shanahan talk about Deebo Samuel. No one talks about Brandon Aiyuk like that. Nobody. Then you watch Davante Adams, who honestly spent like the entire episodes he was in just complaining and bitching about, I'm not getting the ball enough. It's about me. And I was like, oh my God, like, you're a star athlete. You're a star player. You're an amazing receiver. But my God, every time he was on screen, besides the family stuff they show, which was great, mind you, he complained the whole time. I was like, thank God Brandon Aiyuk isn't like that. Because Davante Adams is and has been for almost a decade now a number one receiver, played in the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, went from the Packers to Derek Carr and the Raiders to Jimmy G and the Raiders. And I know that he wanted to play with Derek Carr and got Jimmy G, but he just whined and complained the whole time of, I'm not getting the ball. If I'm getting the ball, and we lose, then we'll see what happens. And it's like, you just won by 10 points Yeah, you didn't get the ball 13 times, brother. And yeah, maybe you're right. The quarterback you had wasn't playing very well, and you fired the head coach and the GM. But my God, it made me so thankful, despite Brandon Aiyuk wanting to be a number one receiver, despite him wanting big time money and probably deserving big time money. I said, thank God you aren't acting like a diva like Davante Adams. And I love Davante. He's a heck of a player. Probably a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best route runners in football. He gets and has one of the greatest releases of all time. It's to a point Tim Ryan, San Francisco's color commentator on KNBR, he was calling Brandon Aiyuk a smaller Davante Adams, which I don't even disagree with. And I said, man, if Aiyuk can continue to do what he does, but keep all of the ego and the mindset Davante has out of the building, you can give him $30 million. I will gladly pay a player to be my fourth option $30 million as long as he puts his head down and works hard and blocks like Brandon Aiyuk. Because all Davante Adams did until he got his way was complain and whine. And if you're a Raider fan, he's a great player. I love Davante. But if you're not a Raider fan, I don't know how you walked away saying he was right. And yes, he was right in one way, being McDaniels and the GM were just terrible. And Jimmy G was bad, mind you. But, like, I would hate to have that kind of player in my locker room. Like, Aiyuk is bought all in to what San Francisco is buying. He just wants a pay raise. Davante never bought in to what the Raiders were selling. Like, not one bit. And went to a point of advocating to get the quarterback changed and fire the head coach to the executives. Like, to a point of, like, Austin Hooper, the tight end for the Raiders last year, was like, thanks for being a leader. What leader whines and complains 24/7 until they get their way? When they do get their way, is like, yep, I'm a good leader. Like, that's not leadership, brother. That's just you want your way, and if you don't get it, you want to get traded. Like, he even said, if you want me to stay here, you're going to make a change. And it was like, that's not leadership. I won't say what it actually is, but it's like, holy crap, this is a guy you want as your captain? I wouldn't. At least Aiyuk leads by example. He blocks downfield, has one of the highest hard-working rates on the team. Like, he gives everything he has. And I was like, we aren't even covering Brandon Aiyuk in this documentary, and somehow he looks better in my eyes than Davante Adams now. Like, my God. But that brings us to George Kittle. Because, again, the way they covered Deebo and Kittle was very different. Deebo was how important you are on the field, the energy you bring, whereas Kittle was much more family-oriented, getting into his psyche, who he is in his mentals, in his brain, in his mind. And, they focused on his zany antics and how they help the team on and off the field, how it helps his teammates. But really, they hammered the point home of his foundation from his parents and his wife. And if you haven't seen it yet, there was a really impactful part. It was before the Packers playoff game where they really kind of dove into what George Kittle's dad's letters are to him before games. And they showed his dad writing the letters, showed what he put at it, and in all caps towards the end of his letter before the Packers game, it said, "Pound the Packers." And you can tell that those letters get George Kittle ready for the game. And, being someone who's 27 years old now, I'm moved out of the house, I'm married, I've started my new life with my wife. Whenever your dad, kind of gives you motivation of like, you can do this, you've always been, a man, you don't need my, you don't need my affirmation. Like, that kind of picks you up of like, you know what, like when you get instilled with confidence by your parents or your wife, it gives an extra oomph to how you play, how you live, how you talk. It gives you more confidence and, gives you more pep in your step, if you will. And then again, as a newly married man, George Kittle's wife was awesome. He tells the story that his wife every morning looks him in the eyes and says, "Go kick some ass today." And I think, when you have someone behind you, pushing you, motivating you, always on the sideline with you, always making sure you see they are there for you, it really does impact you. It's almost like a child, right? Where you better show up to those soccer games, those baseball games, those dance recitals, the plays they're in, because it helps them. It makes them feel like they're doing something right. It makes you feel like that everything you've dedicated your time and effort to means something. And for George Kittle's wife, Claire, to cement herself as my favorite football wife so far, she's awesome. But to see those things, like, you always want somebody behind you, whether it's a best friend, a father, a mother, a wife, you always want those people around you, your foundation, who you surround yourself with to motivate you and put you in the right mindset. And it starts, right in the morning from his wife. Go kick some ass today, babe. Go out there and just kick some ass. Like, if my wife told me as I'm going to Planet Fitness to the gym, you know what, Sterling? Go kick some ass today. I'll bench 500 pounds. I'm like, you're right, babe. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to kick some ass. I'm going to bench 500 pounds. I'm going to squat 700 pounds. Might snap my legs in half, but I'm certainly going to try because you were behind me to motivate me. Like, that was awesome to see. Awesome to hear. And it really kind of, the way it portrayed the Kittle family. We already know they're great as Niner fans, but man, like, it made me love them even more. Then you kind of get into the games themselves, and I didn't know this at the time, but the Dallas week 5, right? That was George Kittle's birthday week. And he talks about, the F Dallas t-shirt that he wore. And the reason why he wore that was because everybody kept tagging him in a photo where Gary Plummer's wearing that. I think it was in the early 90s, F Dallas. I think Niner fans, I'm sure I posted it on social media too. But then you learn that George Kittle scores 3 touchdowns on 3 catches on his birthday, and he's playing like a WWE superstar, but he's playing football. But then he dives into the story of, well, yes, it was an amazing outing for him. He caught 3 touchdowns. But the story behind the F Dallas t-shirt was that he bought one for every single tight end, but he was the only one to actually wear it, and nobody else knew, or at least most players didn't know he had it under his jersey and his pads on the sideline. So when he scored his 3rd touchdown, he pulls the shirt up, says F Dallas right into the camera. There's an amazing photo of it on Google, but he also talks about how when they played Dallas in week 8 this year, despite the $15,000 fine he got last year, that he would do it again. And it's like, man, like, George Kittle is a San Francisco 49er. He's one of us in his heart. I know he's an Iowa boy, but he is a San Francisco 49er for life. I know there's so much talk of, will they, won't they keep him in a few years' time? Will they, won't they trade him? He's getting older. He's in his 30s now. What happens then? I don't think George Kittle's going anywhere. I don't think, money plays a factor, obviously, but you can tell that George Kittle prides himself on being a San Francisco 49er. Then you wrap all of that up into a ball. You go into George Kittle's party bus with him shirtless on the side wearing chubbies, the shorts. Then you go inside the party bus and he's shotgunning beers after beating Dallas 42-10. Like, this guy's freaking awesome. I don't drink myself, but my God, you score 3 touchdowns, you wear an F Dallas t-shirt on national television, and you're chugging beers in your party bus with you shirtless on the side, only to go home and celebrate your birthday afterwards? I mean, my God, this guy's living the life. He's freaking chugging brewskis and he's beating the Cowboys. What other Niner fan wouldn't want to do that every single day of their life? Man, it was awesome. But the Kittle stuff doesn't stop there, because then you go further into the season, later into the year, when San Francisco can clinch the division against the Cardinals. And while they really didn't show George Kittle too much or give you much more information, they showed George Kittle's 101-year-old grandmother named Lugene, not Eugene, Lucky Hendrickson Krager at the game in the wheelchair. And I'm telling you right now, folks, I need George Kittle's 101-year-old grandmother at every single game. She looked right into the camera and said, I play to win. I don't play to lose. Do you? I was like, put this granny in the Louvre. She got to be held up to a high standard because, my goodness, she was awesome. She was awesome to see. And I'm telling you, she's only been to 2 games, and they've both been against the Cardinals, and they're 2-0. All I'm saying is the next time you go to the Super Bowl, George, whenever that may be, maybe you should bring good old Lugene Lucky Hendrickson Krager because she's 2-0 when she's at games. So I had to look into getting Grandma some tickets to the Super Bowl because she plays to win. She don't play to lose, which was awesome. Then you dive in later to the year. You had the Eagles game. You had the playoff games. And this was maybe my biggest, maybe second biggest overall takeaway because they went into the Eagles game after already showing the Dallas Cowboys game. And in that Dallas Cowboys game, you had 2 instances, a coach and a player both saying that this is Dallas's Super Bowl. To us, it's just another game. San Francisco wins 42-10. In Philadelphia, that was a big game for us and a big game for Philly. It's at the Link. They want to defend their home field. San Francisco wants to prove that in the previous year's NFC title game, it would have been a different story had Brock Purdy been healthy. And we all know what happens. San Francisco, confident as can be, has an ugly first half. Then Deebo scores 3 touchdowns in the second half, and they win 42-19. The floodgates open. Philadelphia's season falls apart. And it's like, man. And you hear Deebo Samuel after the game saying, this is how it should have been in 2022. It was just a matter of time. John Lynch, pre-Eagles game, is telling Deebo, I'm expecting an all-timer today. And I was like, man, I wish the Niners would walk into the Super Bowl with the confidence they do against the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, I wish that they would do that. Because when the Niners have this aura of confidence of like, we're not going to lose today, we're going to walk through you, we're going to crush you, we're going to run right through you, and we're going to laugh in your face when we do so, they are unbeatable. There's no mistake. There's a reason they outscored Philadelphia and Dallas 84-29. They walked into both those games overconfident and ready to play from the first snap. Now, those games have nuances and context, sure, but I'm like, why can't you walk into the Super Bowl with that same confidence? Why do we not hear the confidence in their voices? Everyone wants to be respectful and kind, and I get that, but it's like, man, like, and Debbie, you're right. That's on Kyle too, not just the team. You're right, Debbie. It is. From the top to the bottom, John Lynch too. I want John Lynch walking up to Deebo Samuel at the Super Bowl saying, I'm expecting an all-timer today. Just like George Kittle's dad's writing him letters and his wife is instilling confidence in him, go kick some ass today, babe. I want this team's front office, the executives, the GM, the head coach to walk on the field like they're going to win. And I want them to be cocky, be confident. Because this team, when they show they're confident, when they get a little arrogant and cocky, they know they got this thing in the bag. But there just feels like, I'm sure it's a Kansas City Mahomes thing. And again, I get it. It's the Super Bowl. You want to be respectful to your opponent. They're equally as good as you. It's winner take all. But like, forget that. Forget that. Go out there and kick some ass, babe. Go out there and ruin someone's season. I want Deebo Samuel doing the thing and Kittle doing the thing on some suckers sometimes. It's like, God, like, I want, and now I put this on Twitter. People have been pushing back. I am someone that firmly believes if you lose in the playoffs, you better lose to the team that wins it all. There's a lot more respect in losing that way than losing to a chump that doesn't get past the third round. That said, I'm also someone that believes, hey, we're 0-2 against KC in the Super Bowl. Give me Kansas City again. I've watched this team lose 2 heartbreaking times to the same team, and the same quarterback, the same head coach, and the same tight end. I'm tired of it. Give me Kansas City again. It took San Francisco a handful of times in the 80s to beat the Dallas Cowboys. When they did, the bow broke and the floodgates opened, and then they got 4 championships in the 80s. I want that same thing to happen. And San Francisco just happens to play Kansas City this year in the regular season. And for the love of God, Mahomes is great. Spagnuolo's phenomenal. Walk into that game with the same confidence of, you know what? We're going to kick your ass. And we're going to make you feel every hit, every tackle. You are going to feel me for the next 48 minutes, 60 minutes. Until that clock hits 0, you're going to realize you're playing the San Francisco 49ers. And I get training camp happens in 14 days from now. But my goodness, I'm ready to go all the way back and climb that mountain. And I'm on the ledge saying, give me the Kansas City Chiefs again. Because I don't want to be 0-3. But I want to shove it in their face and right the wrongs, man. And maybe I'm dumb for that. I'll eat that all day. I really will. But man, it just made me say, keep that same energy in the Super Bowl. You hear Deebo Samuel come out of halftime against the Lions in the NFC title game, walking up to Kyle saying, about to flip that script, gonna turn this thing around right now. Keep that in the Super Bowl. Everything felt so doom and gloom when you got to the second and third, and I get you want to stay composed, but KC's not that way. Travis Kelce was bumping into and attacking Andy Reid on the sideline during the game, like, give me the ball. I want Deebo. I want Kittle. I want Aiyuk saying, give me the ball. Someone's got to assert themselves in the biggest game, and no one has twice. It's all, be quiet, be confident, be elegant, if you will. Put your pinkies out. No, man, put your pinkies down and start breaking stuff, man. I want 1999 friggin' Limp Bizkit out there. We're going to break some stuff. Like, come on. Someone's got to assert themselves. And I get it's hard. You're in the moment. You're emotional. You're banged up. You're broken. You're bruised. And everything comes to a culmination and you lose the game. And it sucks and it stinks. And you hear George Kittle at the end of the documentary saying, my dream is to win a Super Bowl. And I'm going to do everything I can to once again climb back up that mountain and take another shot at it all. And I won't lie to you. After being angry watching episode 8 of the documentary, watching this team lose again to Kansas City, I looked at my wife and I said, well, there goes my night. I'm upset. She was like, why? And I go, because it hurts. And I didn't even play in the game. Like, I'm just a fan. I'm part of the media. Like, I'm part of the faithful. I have a YouTube show. I have a bachelor's degree in journalism. I have media credentials sometimes. And that crap still hurts me. And I didn't take any lumps and bumps and bruises. But it hurt me to know it hurt them. So it was like, God, I love these players. And getting the insight that we did from Netflix again and Peyton Manning and co who put this thing together, it was awesome. I would love to get McCaffrey and Brock Purdy. Honestly, I would love if they would do a head coaching one and it would be Shanahan, McVay, and that would be great. If you got a head coaching documentary on Netflix the same way we got quarterbacks last year and wide receivers this year, because it's so great to see the players that you love as people. It's so great to get the insight. Yes, stuff on the field is great. We can see Sundays, we can see Thursdays and Mondays, we can see the outcomes and how they got there and what it took to win and lose games. But man, like the behind the scene access we get into their lives, into the locker rooms, into those small, quiet moments in which no one should be there at all, really, that Kittle and Deebo allowed us to see, that's great. And honestly, let's not forget that George Kittle's 2 dogs he adopted after he lost to Kansas City, so cute. And Deebo Samuel's child, I think it's Tashawn, he is adorable. He's emotionless a lot of the time, but he is just so cute. Like, man, like the Niners have all these great players and honestly all these great people. Like, it's very rare that a team comes together and you have 53 plus people that are stand-up people. And honestly, like that goes in, credit goes to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Jed York and company, that they made it a point to when they got the job to find, yes, good players, but also good people and good families. Like, I know Trey Lance isn't here anymore, and he was a big talking point, and he's super controversial for how things played out, but he's a good kid with a great family behind him. Like, that's, San Francisco looks for the foundations. Like, if you have the foundational pieces, you can play in San Francisco. Like, I think that, I wouldn't say, like Debbie says here, it changed my perspective, but it certainly adds layers and nuances to what we thought was the outcomes. It gives a bigger perspective and kind of a wider view on things where, yeah, people were angry and bitter at Deebo Samuel after the year. Trade him. He stinks. I'd rather have Aiyuk. And you go back and watch this thing and you're like, oh my God, Deebo's an animal. He's a monster, and this team would not be anywhere close to how good they are without him. And then we talked about him being a cog in the machine in the offense, how you should still be able to win without him. I agree with that. But Deebo Samuel's a great player and a great person, and the way he's been a part of establishing this culture and bringing San Francisco up the mountain to how dominant they've been alongside George Kittle and Kyle Shanahan and Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. I mean, truly, I get we haven't won anything yet, and it stinks, and it sucks, and we still want to get back to the mountaintop and hopefully claim the crown over the NFL and call ourselves Super Bowl champions. But just like those Harbaugh years, that were short-lived, mind you, a lot of great players on those teams, same as these ones. Like, these things don't happen often. These runs don't happen often. Well, yes, again, you want to win. Sometimes, even if you don't win, you really have to appreciate not just the players for how good they are on the field, but how great they are off the field. And I truly hope that a video, an episode of Receiver can do that for you, whether it is Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or Justin Jefferson, or Deebo, or Kittle. There truly is amazing insight, perspective. It's 8 episodes long, 8 hours of your time. If you've already seen it, tell me what you thought about it below. What did you learn? Do you agree with me about the whole Deebo Samuel being the most important part of the offense is great and all, but you should still be able to win without him? Did you love George Kittle's zany antics on Christmas, wearing the Grimace slippers and hitting things? He had a slingshot and he had Legos. He was living home alone for a small second there in time. It was awesome to see, and truly, it honestly made me fall more in love with the team, because you get to see their wives, their girlfriends, their children, their parents, and who they are off the field under the helmet. And I hope you can get that same perspective that I got, and tell me what you thought about it down below. Did you like it? Did you love it? What did you think about Wide Receiver on Netflix, available right now? Go stream it. Tell me what you thought. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Want to quickly remind you to use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Training camp tickets are going live very, very soon. If you want to get preseason or regular season tickets to watch your 49ers, use that promo code right here on the screen. Or again, 49ers Access and save yourself $20 off. As always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and until next time, stay faithful.